Hello, and welcome to the next edition of the BriefingsDirect Voice of the Customer podcast series. I'm Dana Gardner, Principal Analyst at Inter Arbor Solutions, your host and moderator for this ongoing discussion on digital transformation success stories. Stay with us now to learn how agile businesses are fending off disruption in favor of innovation. Our next thought leader interview examines how DreamWorks Animation is building a multipurpose, all-inclusive, and agile data center capability. We'll now learn why a new era of responsive and dynamic IT infrastructure is demanded, and how one high-performance digital manufacturing leader aims to get there sooner rather than later. Here to describe how an entertainment industry company is leading the charge for bleeding-edge IT as a service, we're joined by Jeff Wyke. He's the CTO of DreamWorks Animation in Glendale, California. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you for having me.
We're delighted to have you here. Tell us a little bit about why the older way of doing IT infrastructure and hosting apps and data just doesn't cut it anymore. What really made that run out of gas?
Well, you have to continue to improve things. I mean, we're in a society and in a world where technology is advancing at an unbelievable pace. You know, the amount of data, the capability of the hardware, you know, the smartness of the infrastructure is coming. And in order for us to, you know, in any business, to stay ahead of the curve, to really drive value into the business, is to continue to innovate.
And not only that, it seems that IT has become more pervasive in what we do. So I've heard you all refer to yourselves as digital manufacturing. Isn't it sort of the case that the demand of your industry is also leading the charge here and that IT just couldn't keep up?
And when I say we're a digital manufacturer, it's because we are a place that manufactures content, you know, whether it's animated films or TV shows. You know, that content's all made on a computer. You know, we give an artist sits in front of a workstation or a monitor, and he's basically building these digital assets that we put through simulations and rendering and all that, so that at the end of it comes out a movie. So that's all about manufacturing, and we actually have a pipe. We call it a pipeline, but it's like an assembly line. I was looking at a slide today about Henry Ford coming up with the first assembly line. It's exactly what we're doing, except instead of adding a car part, we're adding a character. We're adding hair to a character. We're adding clothes. We're adding an environment. We're putting things into the environment. So we're manufacturing that image, that story, in some cases, a linear way. But also in an iterative way. So we're constantly adding more detail as we go through that process of 3 to 4 years to create one animated film.
Well, it also seems that we're now taking that analogy of the manufacturing at the assembly line to a higher plane, because you want to have an assembly line that doesn't just make cars. It can make cars and trains and submarines and helicopters, but you don't have to change the assembly line. You have to adjust it and you have to utilize it properly. So it seems to me that we're at perhaps a cusp in IT where the agility of the infrastructure and its responsiveness to your workloads and demands is better than ever.
I think that's true. If you think about this animation process or any digital manufacturing process, one of the problems that you have is legacy workflows, legacy software, legacy data formats. There's all these things that are really inhibitors to innovation. And there's a lot. We have a lot of tools. We actually write our own software as well. So we kind of do everything that's related to computer science, you know, at the studio. So when we look at how do you innovate, you know, how can you change your environment to be able to move forward and innovate and still carry around some of those legacy systems? And one of the things that we did over the past couple of years is we started to re-architect all of our software tools in order to take advantage of massive multi-core processing, you know, to try to give artists interactivity into their creative process. It's about iterations. How many things can I show a director? How quickly can I create the scene that I can show somebody to get it approved, so I can hand it off to the next person? Because there's two things that you get out of that. One is you can explore more, you can add more creativity, but you can also drive efficiency if you want to, because it's all about how much time, how many people are working on a particular project, and how long does it take. That drives costs. So you have these choices now that says I can add more creativity with because of the compute infrastructure, or I can drive efficiency into the operation. Mm-hmm. So where does the infrastructure fit into that? Because we talk about tools and that ability to make those tools quicker, faster, more real time. When you look at the infrastructure, though, that's sitting on those tools, and we did a project where we tried to take and create a middleware layer between applications that are running and then the hardware, so that we can start to do data abstraction. So we can start to get a little bit more mobile in where is the data, and at that point, where is the processing? And what is those systems underneath it? Because until we could separate the applications through that layer, we weren't really able to do anything down at the core. So now that we've done that, we're attacking the core. And when we look at being able to replace with new compute, being able to add the new, like the Gen 10 blades we just saw with all the security in it, you want that in the infrastructure, and you want to be able to change how you're using that infrastructure. What are those usage patterns? What are those workflows? Be able to optimize. I'll tell you, we used to, if we wanted to do a new project, we used to have to go and say, well, we know that this project takes X amount of infrastructure, so we want to add a project, we need 2X. That makes a lot of sense, and we would build to peak. So if we say, look, at some point in the last 6 months of a show, we're going to need 30,000 cores to be able to finish it for 6 months. We'd say, well, we better have 30,000 cores available, even though there might be times when they're only using 12,000 cores. So you're buying to peak, and that's pretty wasteful. So what we wanted to do is be able to take advantage that those valleys, if you will, is opportunity to do other types of projects and other types of things. But because our infrastructure was so homogeneous, we really didn't have the ability to do a different type of project. We could do another movie, if it was very much the same as that one from an infrastructure usage standpoint. So by having now composable or software-defined infrastructure, we could, and recipes, and being able to understand what the requirements are for those particular projects, we can recompose our infrastructure, parts of it, all of it, and we can vary that horizontally scale, but depending on what we want to do, redefine it, and then be able to get maximum use of our infrastructure and do it quickly.
So it does sound like you have an assembly line that's very agile, able to do different things without ripping and replacing the whole thing. It also sounds like, though, you have a capability in your IT with your infrastructure agility to allow your business leaders to make decisions about mergers and acquisitions or bringing in new types of business if it's aligned, if it's in your best interest. And as IT, you'll be responsive, able to put in the apps, manage those peaks and troughs. So does having the agility not only give you the ability to make more and better movies with higher utilization, but also gives perhaps more wings to your leaders to go and find the right business models for the future that perhaps are even different from what you think of yourselves as today?
That's absolutely true. And we certainly don't want to ever have a reason to turn down some exciting project because your digital infrastructure isn't going to support it. That's horrible. I would feel really bad if that was the case. In fact, that was the case at one time, way back when we did Spirit, Stallion and the Cimarron. It was because it was such a big movie from a consumer product standpoint, someone had asked us to go and make another movie for direct-to-video. I don't know if you guys probably didn't know that. But we couldn't do it. We just didn't have the capacity. So we had to just say no. We turned away a project because we just really couldn't do it. Or the time it would take us to spin up a project like that would be 6 months. And some of these projects now, because, first of all, the world is great for us today, and the reason it's great is people want content. They want to consume it. There's, on your phone, on your laptop, on the side of a building, in theaters, everywhere. People are looking for more content, and it's all about that. I'm glad we're not a platform vendor or mobile provider, because everybody, doesn't matter. Everybody wants our content. And when you're making the best content in the world and you have characters that everybody loves, they want to come to you for that content. But again, like I said, some of those projects require different amounts of compute and infrastructure. So we want to be able to stand this stuff up really fast, not build to peak to say, hey, something might come in, we better just build to peak and have that all the time, because that's too expensive. But we want to be able to be flexible with our infrastructure in order to take advantage of those opportunities.
Now, from an agility perspective, in the business sense, yes, you want to be able to do more and more and lots of different variety of things without having to say no. But from an efficiency and cost perspective, you also want to be able to put in place the ability to manage expectations and to make balance calls between, we could make every blade of grass eat up 16 cores, or maybe we could find the balance. So how is the agility in your infrastructure helping you reach that right creative balance by knowing when to say no, knowing when to say yes, keeping costs in line? I suppose it's sort of similar to what we did 30 years ago with simultaneous engineering, where we would design a physical product for manufacture, knowing that if it didn't work in the factory floor, what's the point of the design? So are we sort of doing a little bit of that with digital now?
It's interesting that you mentioned that. We always look at budgets, and budgets can be money budgets, it can be rendering budgets, it can be storage budgets, networking. I mean, all of those things are commodities that it all takes to go and create a project. Artists and managers, production managers, directors, producers, they're really good at managing those projects. If they understand what is the commodity, what is it that I can spend, what is my budget, and then how do I track that budget? I remember years ago we used to complain about disk space. You guys are using too much disk space, and they said, well, give me a tool to help me manage my disk space, and then I can clean it up, because don't just tell me it's too much. And one of the nice things that we've done lately is in the area of data analytics. When we went in and re-architected our software, we decided we would instrument the heck out of everything. So we start collecting artifacts about rendering, about usage, and every night we run every digital asset that's created through our rendering, and we collect analytics about it. We collect about 1.2 billion artifacts a night when we do this rendering, and we correlate that to what is that thing, what is that character, that basket, that chair, what is it I'm rendering, and then where is it? What shot is it in? What sequence is it in? What characters are connected to? So when someone on the artist side, they're going to go and say, okay, I want to go and render this shot. We know what is the digital resources required to be able to do that. One of the things that's wasteful of digital resources is, one, either having a job that doesn't fit the allocation that you give it, and the other one is not knowing if a job is finished or not. Because some of these render jobs and simulations will take hours and hours. It could take 10 hours to run. At what point is it stuck? At what point do you kill that job and restart it because something got wedged, or was a dependency that got and you don't really know. You're just watching that thing run. If I pull the plug now, is it 2 minutes away from finishing, or is it never going to finish? What we used to do is an artist would go every night. He would do a test render. And he would say, I think this is going to take this much memory, and I think it's going to take this long, and then we would add a little bit of error, because people are not great judges of anything, as opposed to a computer, that you can actually do it. And this is where we talk about going from feeling to fact. So now we don't have artists do that anymore, because we're collecting all that information every night, and we have machine learning that goes in and says, even though this shot has never been run before, this is very similar to this other shot, and we know how much it's going to run. So then we can go in, and if a job is stuck, we can kill it with confidence. Kill it not with kindness, but with confidence. And that really gave us, by doing that machine learning and taking the guesswork out of the allocation of resources, we were able to save 15% of our render time, which is huge. I listened to a gentleman today talk about what a difference a 1% improvement would be, and 50%, that was huge, and that's 15% less money you have to spend. It's 15% faster times for a director to be able to see something. It's 15% more iterations. It's 15% more jokes in a film. So that was really huge for us.
Yeah. It allows you to reach your deadlines with certainty, too, which, of course, is very important in many industries, probably more important in yours. So it sounds like you're in the digital manufacturing equivalent of working smart and not hard. Maybe hard isn't the right word. But the more intelligence you can bring to bear, the better you can free up the art because you have nailed the science when it comes to creating something.
It's interesting. We talk about, intelligence at the edge, and the Internet of Things, that sort of thing. And in my world, the edge is actually an artist. And if we can take intelligence about their work, the computational requirements that they're doing, and if we can push that data, that intelligence to an artist, they're actually really, really good at managing their own work. It's when they don't have any idea that this particular thing is going to cause, 6 months from now is going to cause a huge increase in memory usage or render time. When they don't know that, it's hard for them to be able to self-manage. But now we actually have, artists can access Tableau reports every day and see exactly what the memory usage was or the compute usage of any of the assets they created, and they can correct it at that time, and say, oh, gee, I didn't realize that this one object in this scene was causing up all the render time. We had on Megamind, which is a movie we made several years ago, before we had this, at the end, and actually probably on every movie I've worked in until we had this data analytics in place, for some reason in some shots, Megamind's render times went through the roof. And we're like, why is that? We really didn't understand. And after the movie was over, when we could go back and pin printouts of logs around the briefing center, right, to look at it, we determined it's his watch. Whenever his watch was in frame, the render times went up, and we looked at the models, and a well-meaning artist had taken a model of a watch. And every gear was modeled, everything about this watch, and it was just a huge, heavy asset. But it's too late to do anything about it. But now, if he was making that watch today, tomorrow he would find out that, oh my God, you've really over-modeled that watch. We need to go and reduce that down because it's really not a key element to the story. So, and they can do that today, which is really great.
It is. I'm a big fan of animated films, and I'm so happy that my kids drag me to see them because I enjoy them as much as they do. But when you mention an artist at the edge, it seems to me it's an army at the edge, because I wait through the end of the movie and I look at the scroll. Hundreds and hundreds of people at work putting this together. So you're dealing with not just one artist making a decision. You have an army of people, and it's astounding that you can bring this level of data-driven efficiency to it.
It becomes so much more important, too, as we become a more mobile workforce, and we have artists that are anywhere in the world that we might want to have work on our films. Now it becomes so imperative to be able to have the information about what those artists are doing so that they can collaborate. We know what value we're really getting, from that. And it's so much information is available now. And if you capture it, you can find so many things that we can really understand about our any process, our creative process, to be able to drive efficiency and value into the business.
All right, well, thanks, Jeff. Before we close out, maybe a little bit of a look in the crystal ball with things like auto-scaling and composable infrastructure. Where do we go next with CGI? As you say, all these great screens in people's hands, handling high dev, all the networks able to deliver that. Clearly almost an unlimited opportunity to bring entertainment to people. What can you now do with that flexible, efficient, optimized infrastructure? What should we expect? 100% CGI movies? What's on the horizon?
there's an explosion in content, an explosion in delivery platforms. We're exploring all kinds of different, mediums. I mean, there really is no limit into where and how you can create great imagery, and the ability to do that, the ability to not say no to any project that comes along, is going to be a great asset. We always say that we don't know in the future, with that crystal ball, how audiences are going to consume, our content. We just know that we want to be able to supply that content and that it's the best content in the world.
And it sounds like you feel confident that the infrastructure you have in place is going to be able to accommodate whatever those demands are. The art and the economics are the variables, but the infrastructure is not.
Having software defined everything. I came from software side. I started as a programmer, so I'm coming back into my element. I really believe that now that you can compose things, you can change things with software without having to have people go in and rewire or restack, but be able to change on demand. And with machine learning, to be able to learn what those demands are, because I want the computers to actually optimize themselves. And compose themselves so that I can be on the beach and I'll know that my infrastructure is changing, scaling, and flexing to be able to meet the demands of whatever we throw at it.
Well, very good. I'm afraid we'll have to leave it there. We've been examining how DreamWorks Animation is building a multi-purpose, all-inclusive, and agile data center capability for now and in the future. And we've learned how one high-performance digital manufacturing innovator here with us today is leading the charge for bleeding-edge IT as a service agility. So, with all those buzzwords over, please join me in thanking our guest, Jeff White. He's the CTO of DreamWorks Animation in Glendale, California. Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Dana.
And a big thank you to our audience as well for joining this Briefings Direct Voice of the Customer Digital Transformation Success Story. I'm Dana Gardner, Principal Analyst at Inter Arbor Solutions, your host for this ongoing series of Hewlett-Packard Enterprise-sponsored interviews. Thanks again for listening. Feel free to pass this on to your IT community, and do come back next time.